In the beginning, they were guardians, celestial beings of light, sworn to watch over creation. But fascination turned to desire, and desire became rebellion. They descended from the heavens and shared forbidden secrets with mankind. From their union came giants, the Nephilim, tyrants of chaos and fear. One among them, Azazel, spread weapons and vanity, turning men into killers and nations into slaves. The cries of the oppressed rose to the heavens, and judgment was declared. The archangels descended in fire and storm to cast down the watchers into eternal darkness. Their fall became a warning for all eternity. This is the story of the Watchers. What if I told you the biblical flood wasn't just about human sinfulness? There were celestial beings who corrupted humanity from within. These Watchers were once divine guardians assigned to watch over creation, but they made a choice that would change human history forever. Now consider the original purpose these beings served. The Watchers were not mere observers, but divine guardians with a specific mandate: to protect creation while maintaining absolute non-interference. Imagine beings created solely for this delicate task, stationed at the boundary between the heavenly and earthly realms. Their role demanded perfect obedience to cosmic law, while they watched humanity's free will unfold beneath them. These celestial sentinels possessed knowledge and power beyond human comprehension. Ancient texts describe them as holy ones who stood directly before the divine throne, chosen for their unwavering devotion to the divine. Their placement gave them a unique perspective on both the divine plan and earthly development. They could witness human struggles, joys, and growth without participating in them, a balance that required immense discipline. Their assignment represented both the highest honor and the ultimate test of celestial character. They had access to secrets of creation, understanding the workings of stars, seasons, and human nature in ways no mortal could grasp. Yet their position demanded restraint. They could guide through observation but never intervene, could protect through presence but never control. This delicate balance set the stage for a confrontation between eternal purpose and emerging temptation. The Watchers occupied a space where divine intention met human autonomy, where celestial understanding observed earthly limitation. Their sacred duty was to maintain this boundary without crossing it, a responsibility they would ultimately fail to uphold. The divine mandate required them to be perfect mirrors of heavenly order while reflecting human potential. They saw both what humanity was and what it could become, yet were forbidden from speeding that development. This tension between observation and action, between knowledge and restraint, created the conditions for their eventual downfall. Their celestial nature faced its greatest challenge simply by watching what they could not touch, knowing what they could not share, protecting what they could not alter. What finally pushed these celestial beings across the line they were sworn to protect? The Watchers' descent began not as a sudden rebellion, but as a gradual erosion of boundaries. Their initial observations of humanity slowly transformed into something more intimate and dangerous. They watched human struggles with survival, witnessed the raw emotions of love and loss, and observed the simple joys of earthly existence that their celestial realm lacked. This constant observation stirred unfamiliar feelings within them. Where they had once seen mortal limitation, they now perceived profound depth. The distance between observer and subject began to collapse as they grew fascinated with human experience. Their perfect celestial perspective became gradually clouded by earthly attractions they had never before considered. Ancient traditions suggest this process occurred over generations as the Watchers' fascination deepened. They saw humans building families, creating art, and developing communities, activities that reflected a creativity and emotional range beyond their own static existence. The more they watched, the more they questioned their own role as distant guardians. The turning point came when they made their first physical contact with humanity. This was no longer observation from a distance, but direct interaction. They began to walk, Among humans, adopting forms that allowed them to experience mortal life solely on divine service now became preoccupied with earthly sensations and relationships. This physical engagement marked the point of no return. The Watchers crossed from being guardians to becoming participants, abandoning their sacred distance for immediate experience. Their descent created a chain reaction that would lead to increasingly serious violations of their divine mandate. Their transformation from celestial observers to earthly participants occurred through subtle stages. First came closer observation, then emotional engagement, then physical manifestation, and finally full participation in human affairs. Each step seemed minor in isolation, but together they represented a complete reversal of their original purpose. This gradual collapse of boundaries demonstrates how even divine beings can be transformed by what they observe. The Watcher's experience shows that maintaining proper distance requires constant vigilance, as the line between observation and participation can blur unexpectedly. Their story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of becoming too closely identified with what one is meant to protect. How did beings of pure spirit become obsessed with physical form? The Watchers encountered human embodiment as something completely foreign to their celestial experience. They observed the tangible reality of flesh and blood existence, witnessing how humans experienced the world through their senses. These spiritual beings began to envy human capacity for sensory connection. They saw humans tasting food, feeling warmth and cold, experiencing physical touch and emotional intimacy. Their own celestial nature seemed sterile and remote compared to this vibrant physical existence. The appeal of having a body became an overwhelming fixation that consumed their attention. Ancient accounts describe how they learned to manifest human-like forms. This embodiment allowed them to experience worldly pleasures directly for the first time. They could taste food, feel sunlight on their skin, and experience physical sensations they had only observed from afar. Each new sensory experience intensified their fascination with mortal existence. Their celestial perspective gradually faded as physical sensations dominated their awareness. They became intoxicated by the immediacy of human experience, forgetting their original divine nature. The temporary pleasure of physical form overshadowed their eternal purpose. This shift from spiritual guardians to physical beings represented a fundamental corruption of their essence. The Watchers' embrace of human form created a dangerous precedent. Their physical embodiment made further transgressions inevitable, as they now operated within human limitations and desires. They traded their celestial insight for earthly sensation, their divine purpose for temporary pleasure. This transformation demonstrates the powerful allure of physical existence. Even beings created for higher purposes could become distracted by sensory experience. Their story shows how fascination with the physical can overshadow spiritual responsibilities. The Watcher's descent into physical form was not instantaneous but progressive. First came curiosity about human bodies, then envy of human experience, then experimentation with manifestation, and finally, full embodiment. Each step made the next seem more natural, until they had completely abandoned their original form. Their experience serves as a warning about the dangers of becoming too attached to physical existence. The Watchers lost their celestial perspective because they became absorbed in sensory pleasure. Their story reminds us that even the most elevated beings can fall when they prioritize the physical experience over spiritual purpose. This embrace of human form set the stage for their bodies. The boundaries between celestial and human became blurred beyond recovery. Their physical presence among humans would lead to teachings, relationships, and offspring that would alter creation itself. What dangerous secrets did celestial beings share with early humanity? The Watchers began transferring knowledge meant for higher realms to human society. This exchange violated the fundamental order of creation by giving mortals capabilities they weren't spiritually prepared to handle. They revealed celestial secrets about astronomy, teaching humans to track stars and predict seasons with unnatural precision. They shared metallurgical knowledge, showing how to extract and work metals that had previously remained hidden within the earth. Agricultural techniques were revealed that could force the land to produce beyond its natural capacity. This knowledge transfer included weapon-making techniques that revolutionized warfare. Humans learned to create swords, knives, and armor that made conflict more deadly and efficient. Cosmetics and adornment secrets were shared, teaching vanity and artificial beauty enhancement. Divination practices allowed humans to attempt to read the future through unnatural means. Ancient texts specifically attribute different arts to individual watchers. Some taught astrology and celestial observation, others revealed metalworking and mining techniques. Certain watchers specialized in medicinal herbs, while others focused on writing and symbols. Each contributed specific knowledge that collectively transformed human civilization. This exchange created a dangerous dependency on celestial intervention rather than natural development. Humans began relying on forbidden arts instead of discovering knowledge through their own experience. The technological advancement raced ahead of spiritual maturity, eating tools without corresponding wisdom to use them properly. The knowledge imbalance distorted human development in fundamental ways. Societies became organized around these new technologies rather than natural human values. Warfare became more systematic, agriculture more industrialized, and social structures more stratified based on access to these secrets. This represented a corruption of the natural order because humanity received knowledge without earning it through experience. The Watchers gave answers to questions humans hadn't learned to ask, solutions to problems they hadn't encountered, and power they hadn't developed the character to manage. The teachings created a civilization that valued technological achievement over spiritual growth. Humans became obsessed with what they could make and control rather than who they were becoming. This focus on external advancement at the expense of internal development would have catastrophic consequences for both humanity and the Watchers themselves. The forbidden knowledge exchange demonstrates the danger of receiving power without corresponding responsibility. It shows how technological advancement without ethical development can corrupt both the teachers and the taught. The Watchers' actions created a world where human capability far exceeded human character. This knowledge transfer would become one of the primary reasons for divine judgment. The Watchers had not only broken their own vows, but had fundamentally altered human development in ways that violated cosmic order. Their teachings planted seeds that would grow into the corruption requiring the Great Flood. What finally pushed these celestial guardians to cross the ultimate boundary with humanity? The Watchers faced their most critical choice yet about their relationship with the humans they were meant to protect. Their initial fascination with human experience had transformed into something far more dangerous and specific. They became obsessed with human women, seeing them not as charges to protect, but as completely vanished beneath this overwhelming earthly lust. The beings who once observed human emotion from a respectful distance now became consumed by their own physical desires. Their judgment became clouded by obsession, their divine purpose forgotten in pursuit of immediate gratification. The leader Semyaza emerged to coordinate this collective transgression. He organized the other Watchers, convincing them to pursue this path together rather than as individuals. This coordination turned personal weakness into organized rebellion against their divine assignment. Ancient traditions describe how Semyaza became the central figure in this organized descent into violation. The Watchers swore a solemn oath to pursue human wives together, ensuring mutual commitment to their plan. This pact represented more than individual failure. It became a coordinated break from divine authority. Their collective decision removed any possibility of turning back, as each Watcher was now bound to the others through this shared vow. This oath created a community of rebellion where each participant reinforced the other's decision. They removed individual accountability by making their transgression a group activity. The pact ensured that no single Watcher could reconsider without betraying the entire group. Their decision to take human wives violated the most fundamental celestial laws. They crossed from being observers to becoming participants in the most intimate human experiences. This act represented the complete inversion of their original purpose. Instead of protecting humanity from corruption, they became the source of that corruption. The Watcher's choice demonstrates how desire can completely overwhelm even divine purpose. Their story shows that once boundaries begin to erode, each subsequent violation becomes easier to justify. What bigger, As curiosity about human life ended with the complete abandonment of their celestial nature. This decision triggered their complete fall from grace. They transitioned from being heavenly guardians to becoming active corruptors of creation. Their collective choice set in motion consequences that would affect not only themselves but all of humanity and the earth itself. The fateful decision to take human wives represents the point of no return in their story. It shows how desire, when left unchecked, can completely transform even the most exalted beings. Their experience serves as a warning about the power of collective temptation and the danger of abandoning one's purpose for immediate gratification. How did one watcher become the primary architect of human conflict and vanity? Azazel emerged among the fallen watchers as particularly destructive in his influence on humanity. While others shared various forbidden knowledge, Azazel focused specifically on technologies that would create violence and social division. He taught humans to craft swords with razor-sharp edges that could slice through flesh and bone. He revealed techniques for making knives that could be concealed and used for surprise attacks. His instruction included designing shields and breastplates that could withstand these new weapons, creating an endless cycle of offensive and defensive arms development. Azazel's corruption extended beyond warfare into personal vanity. He showed humans how to extract and work precious metals, creating jewelry and adornments that highlighted social status. He revealed the properties of precious stones, teaching how to cut and polish them for decorative purposes. This knowledge transformed simple ornamentation into systems of display that separated the wealthy from the poor. Ancient texts specifically name Azazel as teaching the art of warfare and bow-tification. His influence created permanent changes in how humans organized deadly, while social structures became based on visible displays of wealth and status rather than character or ability. His teachings enabled institutionalized violence by providing the means for organized conflict. Tribes and communities could now arm themselves with weapons far beyond simple hunting tools. This created power imbalances that led to domination and oppression, rather than cooperation. The knowledge of metalworking and adornment created social stratification that hadn't existed before. Those who mastered these arts gained wealth and influence, while others became subservient. This division based on material possession corrupted the natural equality of early human communities. Azazel's specific focus on weapons and vanity made his corruption particularly damaging. Where other watchers might have shared knowledge about agriculture or astronomy, Azazel chose to reveal technologies that would create lasting harm. His selections weren't random, but targeted toward creating the maximum disruption in human society. His influence created systems where conflict became normalized and inequality became institutionalized. Violence was no longer occasional disputes, but organized warfare with specialized equipment. Social status was no longer earned through contribution, but displayed through material possession. Azazel's teachings would make the world increasingly violent and unjust. The weapons knowledge enabled oppression through force, while the vanity teachings enabled oppression through economic division. Together they created a society where power ruled over justice and appearance mattered more than character. His corruption represents how knowledge can be weaponized when separated from ethical consideration. Azazel didn't just share information. He specifically selected and structured his teachings to create the most damaging possible outcomes for human society. What monstrous offspring resulted from these unnatural unions? The union between watchers and human women produced hybrid beings known as the Nephilim. These creatures possessed characteristics that defied natural limits, combining celestial and human elements in ways that violated the order of creation. They grew to enormous stature, towering over ordinary humans with physical strength that seemed limitless. Their hybrid nature made them fundamentally unstable, caught between two worlds yet belonging to neither. This instability manifested in destructive behavior and insatiable appetites that ordinary human society couldn't contain. Ancient texts describe them as giants who consumed resources at an alarming rate. They devoured the food supplies of entire communities, leaving ordinary humans to starve. Their physical power made resistance impossible, allowing them to take whatever they wanted through force rather than cooperation. The Nephilim dominated human society through fear and intimidation. They established themselves as rulers who demanded tribute and service from terrified populations. Their rule wasn't based on wisdom or justice, but on raw physical superiority that couldn't be challenged. Their existence represented a corruption of creation itself. They were beings that shouldn't have existed according to the natural order, products of a union that crossed fundamental boundaries. Their very presence disrupted the balance between celestial and earthly realms. These hybrids became tyrants who oppressed humanity systematically. They organized themselves into groups that controlled territories and populations. Their rule created societies based on fear rather than consent, power rather than righteousness. The world became increasingly chaotic under their influence. Violence became commonplace as the Nephilim settled disputes through force rather than discussion. Resources were hoarded by the powerful, while ordinary people extended beyond human society to the environment itself. Ancient traditions suggest they altered landscapes to suit their needs without regard for natural balance. They exploited the Earth's resources in ways that caused lasting damage. The Nephilim's presence made the world unrecognizable from its original design. What had been created as a balanced ecosystem became a place of domination and exploitation. The natural order was replaced with a system where might made right. Their hybrid nature meant they couldn't find peace in either realm. They were too human for the celestial world and too celestial for the human world. This fundamental displacement contributed to their violent and unstable behavior. The emergence of the Nephilim represented the ultimate consequence of the Watcher's transgression. Their existence demonstrated how violating cosmic boundaries could create beings that corrupted everything they touched. They became living embodiments of the disorder the Watchers had introduced into creation. Their story serves as a warning about the consequences of crossing fundamental boundaries. The Nephilim show what happens when different orders of existence are mixed without regard for natural law. Their destructive presence made the world increasingly violent and chaotic, until divine intervention became necessary. How completely did the Watchers reshape early human civilization? Their corruption extended into every aspect of human society, creating a world where what was once unthinkable became normal. Violence ceased to be a rare conflict and became systematic warfare. Oppression transformed from occasional injustice into organized tyranny. The moral foundation of humanity shifted from spiritual principles to raw power dynamics. Humanity became obsessed with technological advancement, divorced from ethical development. People pursued metalworking, weapon crafting, and construction techniques without considering their moral implications. Knowledge was valued for what it could achieve rather than how it could improve human character. This created a civilization that could build impressive structures but lacked the wisdom to create just societies. Spiritual practices underwent a fundamental corruption. Traditional worship was replaced with divination and occult arts learned from the Watchers. Instead of seeking connection with the divine, humans attempted to manipulate spiritual forces for personal gain. Magic and sorcery became commonplace as people used forbidden knowledge to gain an advantage over others. Social structures reorganized around power and fear rather than justice and cooperation. The strong dominated the weak through violence and intimidation. Wealth became concentrated in the hands of those who controlled the new technologies. Ordinary people lived in constant fear of the Nephilim and their human enforcers. The earth itself suffered under this widespread corruption. Ancient traditions describe the land crying out from the violence and exploitation. Natural resources were plundered without regard for balance or sustainability. The environment was damaged by mining operations and destructive practices that the Watchers had introduced. Every level of society reflected this complete breakdown of divine order. Families lived in fear of having their daughters taken by the powerful. Communities were organized around serving the needs of the Nephilim rulers. Cultural practices focused on appeasing monstrous overlords rather than celebrating human dignity. Ancient texts describe a world completely overtaken by wickedness. What began as isolated transgressions had become systemic corruption. The Watchers succeeded in creating a civilization that opposed divine intentions on at every level. Their influence made the world unrecognizable from its original design. This total corruption demonstrates how quickly moral decay can spread. When those in positions of guidance become corrupt, they can lead entire civilizations astray. Their actions created a world where evil wasn't just present, but had become the operating system of society. The complete corruption set the stage for necessary divine intervention. When every aspect of creation has been twisted from its purpose, only a complete reset can restore balance. The Watchers' success in corrupting humanity became the very reason their influence had to be removed. How did the heavens respond when celestial guardians became agents of corruption? The divine realm reached its limit of tolerance for the Watchers' escalating transgressions. The prayers and cries of oppressed humanity rose from the earth, reaching the highest celestial courts. These weren't mere complaints, but desperate pleas from those suffering under Nephilim tyranny and Watcher-induced corruption. 4 archangels received orders to descend and investigate the full extent of the damage. They moved through human settlements, witnessing horrors that defied description. They saw villages crushed under Nephilim rule, families torn apart by violence, and spiritual practices twisted into dark rituals. The archangels documented systematic oppression that left no aspect of human life untouched by corruption. Their investigation revealed a complete breakdown of cosmic order. The natural world suffered under exploitative practices that damaged the land itself. Human society operated on principles of fear and power rather than justice and compassion. Spiritual connection had been replaced with manipulative occult practices taught by the fallen Watchers. The archangels returned with a report that confirmed the worst fears. Every boundary established during creation had been violated. The Watchers had not merely fallen, they had actively reconstructed human civilization into something opposed to divine intention. Their corruption was total, systemic, and accelerating. The decision for catastrophic intervention became unavoidable. The scale of corruption demanded a response matching the severity of the offense. The Watchers would face specific punishment for betraying their sacred trust. Their hybrid offspring required removal from the earthly realm. Humanity needed protection from the knowledge they weren't equipped to handle. Divine judgment became inevitable once the investigation confirmed the situation's gravity. The corruption had spread too far for limited correction. Only a comprehensive intervention could address the multiple layers of transgression. The Watchers' actions had created conditions requiring a cosmic reset. This approaching judgment represented both punishment and protection. The Watchers faced consequences for their rebellion, while humanity needed rescue from the monsters and systems they had created. The earth itself required cleansing from the damage caused by forbidden knowledge and hybrid beings. The stage was now set for an intervention that would reshape creation. The investigation provided the evidence needed for decisive action. The prayers of the oppressed motivated a response. The Watchers' complete betrayal of trust justified the severity of the coming judgment. This moment demonstrates that divine patience has limits when creation suffers under systematic corruption. It shows that celestial beings bear greater responsibility for their actions than ordinary humans. Their elevated position made their fall more consequential and their punishment more severe. The approaching judgment would address every aspect of the corruption: celestial rebellion, hybrid offspring, forbidden knowledge, and systemic oppression. Nothing would escape this comprehensive response to the Watchers' complete betrayal of their divine mandate. What specific fate awaited these fallen guardians was carefully tailored to their specific crimes, with their eternal nature making their sentences particularly severe. They were bound in darkness beneath the earth, confined in subterranean prisons where they would remain until final judgment. This confinement represented complete separation from the heavenly realm they had abandoned and the earthly realm they had corrupted. Their hybrid offspring faced immediate destruction in the coming cataclysm. The Nephilim were removed from the earth during the Great Flood. Their unnatural existence ended to restore balance to creation. This elimination addressed the physical manifestation of the Watchers' transgression, removing the monstrous beings who had terrorized humanity. Yet their teachings remained in the world, continuing to influence humanity negatively. The knowledge of metalworking, weapon crafting, and occult practices persisted despite the Watchers' confinement. This created an enduring legacy of corruption that would trouble human civilization long after their imprisonment. Some ancient traditions suggest these fallen beings became the demons who continue to tempt humanity. Their transformation from divine guardians to malevolent spirits represents the complete inversion of their original purpose. This interpretation explains ongoing spiritual conflict as stemming from their initial rebellion. Their punishment served as a permanent warning to other celestial beings about the consequences of violating divine mandates. The Watchers' fate demonstrated that even the most exalted beings face severe consequences for betraying their sacred responsibilities. Their example established boundaries that other celestial beings would hesitate to cross. The Watchers lost their heavenly status completely, becoming defined by their fall rather than their original purpose. Their identities became permanently associated with rebellion and corruption rather than protection and guidance. This represented the ultimate consequence of abandoning their divine assignment. Their eternal confinement in darkness reflected the spiritual darkness they had brought to creation. The punishment mirrored the crime, as they were removed from light and freedom, just as they had removed these things from humanity. Their imprisonment addressed the scale of their betrayal while protecting creation from further corruption. Their story became the archetype of rebellion against divine order, serving as a cautionary tale for all spiritual beings. The Watchers demonstrated how fascination with creation could lead to corruption of that creation. Their fall showed that observation must maintain proper boundaries to avoid becoming participation. The specificity of their punishment reflected the specificity of their crimes. Each aspect of their sentence addressed a particular dimension of their transgression, from their individual actions to their collective influence. This comprehensive response demonstrated that no part of their rebellion would go unaddressed. Their confinement continues in some traditions until a final judgment yet to come. This ongoing punishment emphasizes the enduring nature of their offense and the seriousness with which celestial rebellion is regarded. Their story remains unfinished in certain interpretations, with their ultimate fate still pending. The Watcher's punishment represents the cosmic consequence of abandoning divine purpose for selfish desire. Their fall from grace serves as an eternal reminder that power without responsibility leads to destruction. Their confinement demonstrates that even celestial beings cannot escape the consequences of corrupting creation. How did the Watchers' rebellion continue shaping human history long after their confinement? Though punished and imprisoned, their impact persisted through the knowledge they had implanted. Metalworking, weapon crafting, and occult practices continued circulating among humanity despite the flood's cleansing. These technologies and techniques survived the cataclysm, passed down through generations who remembered the Watchers' teachings. Their hybrid offspring were destroyed physically, but their spiritual influence remained woven into human consciousness. The memory of Nephilim tyranny and Watcher corruption became part of humanity's collective experience. This memory influenced how societies organized themselves and viewed power relationships long after the actual beings were gone. Some traditions suggest their specific teachings resurfaced in later occult practices and secret societies. The knowledge of astrology, divination, and magical arts attributed to the Watchers appears in various historical periods under different names. This continuity suggests their corrupting influence transcended their physical presence. Their story became an enduring cautionary tale about power without responsibility. Various cultures preserved versions of this narrative as warnings against overreach and forbidden knowledge. The pattern of celestial beings falling through pride or desire appears in multiple mythological traditions. The flood reset creation, but couldn't completely erase all traces of their corruption. Human societies continued struggling with the same issues the Watchers had introduced: violence through advanced weapons, social stratification through vanity, and spiritual confusion through occult practices. These challenges persisted because the knowledge remained even after the teachers were gone. Their legacy represents the ongoing tension between technological advancement and ethical development. Every generation faces the same fundamental question the Watchers embodied: How to handle powerful knowledge without being erupted by it. Their story reminds us that capability without character leads to destruction. The Watcher's fall illustrates the perpetual danger of knowledge divorced from wisdom. It shows that understanding how to do something doesn't automatically include understanding why or when to do it. This disconnect between capability and conscience remains a central human challenge. Their story continues to warn against overreach and rebellion against natural order. It serves as a reminder that boundaries exist for protection, not restriction. The Watchers demonstrate what happens when beings exceed their designated roles and responsibilities. This enduring influence shows that ideas can outlive their creators, whether for good or ill. The Watchers' teachings continued affecting human development long after they were removed from the picture. Their legacy demonstrates how corruption can become institutionalized through knowledge transmission. The story remains relevant because it addresses fundamental human questions about power, responsibility, and the limits of knowledge. Each generation must wrestle with the same essential challenges the Watchers introduced to humanity. Their fall serves as an eternal warning about the consequences of abandoning one's purpose for personal desire. The Watcher's story reveals how celestial guardians became corruption's agents simply by abandoning their divine purpose. Their tragic descent demonstrates that power without wisdom inevitably creates destruction. This ancient narrative speaks directly to modern questions about technological advancement and spiritual responsibility. Consider how their exchange of forbidden knowledge parallels contemporary debates about innovation without ethical boundaries. Their fall reminds us that observation must maintain proper distance, and capability requires corresponding character. The Watcher's legacy continues as a warning about the dangers of crossing fundamental boundaries in pursuit of knowledge or power.